Hello again, Namaste everyone. This video is about overview of developmental stages. So I will be discussing some important previous year's questions from 12th standard NIOS at the end of this video. So please do stay till the end of this video. If you look around yourself, you'll see people of different age groups. It could be in your home or in your neighborhood. So people think differently in different stages of their lifespan. So this variation is partly because everyone is in a different stage of life. So it's obvious that we are all in different stages, and human development or human life proceeds through different stages. Now, these stages are temporary, and each stage has some dominant characteristics, which makes the stage unique. Now, for example, you are in the stage of adolescence and you will progress to the stage of adulthood. Now, each of these stages have some social expectations. They're called developmental tasks. So we progress towards an assumed goal in each of the stage. And this happens to all of us. So it is the same as other people, and we have to attain these goals to progress to the next stage. Like, for example, you're an adolescent, and during the adolescent stage, your task is to study. Your developmental task as a student is to study well. The next role or the stage of life, the young adult, at this stage, the developmental task is making career choices, choosing a life partner, and so on. So, the genetic blueprint in all of us guides our development during the prenatal stage and soon after birth. What is the prenatal stage? It is the duration from conception to birth, and usually it is about 40 weeks. So the genetic and environmental factors affect our development in the prenatal stage. Just like how the genetic blueprint guides prenatal development, along with our genes, the environment around us shapes our personality into the individual that we become. So there are many factors which can affect the development of the fetus during the prenatal stage. One of them is the maternal factors, the mother's age, nutrition, the emotional state of the mother all affect the development of the fetus. And another one is threats. These also influence the development of the baby within the uterus. One of the threats being diseases. They can be passed on from the mother to the baby, like measles, mumps, rubella, and so on. They cause genetic defects, birth defects, miscarriage, or stillbirth. Another threat is teratogens or environmental agents like drugs, alcohol, tobacco, X-rays, pollution, and so on. So in most developmental psychology texts, childhood is divided into stages like infancy from birth to 2 years, early childhood 3 to 5 years, middle and late childhood 6 to 11 years. Now, the brain in humans develops at a very rapid speed before and after birth. You already know the parts of the brain and the role of the cerebrum in different functions. So, just before birth, newborns have most of the nerve cells, but not all of them. So, even after birth, the development of the brain continues. Neural connections between the nerve cells also develop at a very fast pace. So we think that the child or the newborn is very helpless, but the newborn is actually not as helpless as we think, because the newborn has many functions that sustain life, like breathing, sucking, and swallowing. And they're able to locate sound direction in the first week. They're able to recognize the source of the sound. They can distinguish mother's voice from the voice of other women, and they can imitate simple gestures like putting their tongue out and opening their mouth. Now, the physical and motor development that happens in infants um, is mostly reflexes. So, the physical development as such is can be defined as changes in height, weight, and body proportions, but we can understand it better in terms of motor achievements like gross motor skills and fine motor skills. These are the two types of motor skills. And gross motor skills involves larger muscles, and fine motor skills involves smaller muscles. Now, in a newborn, the physical development and motor development is better understood in the form of reflexes. What are reflexes? They are automatic built-in responses to stimuli. Newborns' movements are governed by reflexes. These are genetically carried survival mechanisms for the newborn. Before the newborns have the opportunity to learn, their reflexes act as adaptive mechanisms. Reflexes like coughing, yawning, blinking, and so on, they continue throughout life. But other reflexes like the rooting reflex, Moro, grasping reflex, Babinski reflex, all these I will be discussing in detail in class. These reflexes disappear as the brain matures and voluntary control over behavior is gained by the infant. So the physical development, which is very obvious to us in the first 4 months, is the birth weight doubles and it triples by the time the child is 1 year old. Gross motor skills, the child is able to hold her head without support within the first few weeks when you hold the child or when the child is in prone position, lying in prone position. The child is able to sit independently by the time he or she is 6 to 7 months old, stand independently by the time the child is 10 to 12 months old, and walk independently within 13 to 18 months, run by the time the child is 2 years old. The fine motor skills that the child achieves within 2 years is the child's reflexes from the grasping reflex. It develops into voluntary movements like reaching and grasping. By the time they're 2 years old, the toddlers are able to manipulate objects and they're able to um, explore their environment, explore the objects in their environment. Now, the sensory abilities, sensory development in infancy, the vision of the infant or the newborn is lower than the adult. They prefer to look at objects with contrasting colors. They like to look at human faces because that's how they learn. That's how they learn language by observing how we speak. And it is seen by research that the vision of the newborn improves by 6 months and reaches adult vision by 1 year. And color vision develops by the time the baby is 3 months old. When it comes to hearing, the child is able to hear clearly at birth. And like I said earlier, he's able to recognize the mother's voice from other voices, and the sound localization also improves. The baby or the newborn is able to feel touch, pain, and able to taste and smell as well. Now, cognitive development in infants, Does a 3-year-old understand things the same way as an 8-year-old? Jean Piaget was a Swiss psychologist who came up with this theory of cognitive development, and he said that children actively construct their understanding of the world uh, through activities. Hence, it's important for us to provide them opportunities and provide stimulating environments. So he said that information doesn't simply enter their minds from the environment, they actively construct their cognition or intelligence. So each stage, as you can see, there are 4 stages of cognitive development in the human lifespan. Each stage has a characteristic way of thinking and it is age related. Therefore, it is the different way that we think at different ages which makes each stage more advanced than the previous one, and it's not the amount of info that you provide. It's basically because the way of thinking changes at each stage. So the sensory motor stage is from 0 to 2 years. If you have observed children put things into their mouth and they want to learn based on their senses, seeing, hearing, tasting, smelling, and touching. Hence, they put things, objects into their mouth, or they want to feel it with their hands. And at this stage, what is the characteristic? It is development of object permanence. The child understands that objects continue to exist even though you can't see them. Because very young children, when they are separated from their mother, become anxious and they start crying. That is because they haven't developed the object permanence. The next stage is pre-operational from 2 to 7 years. Here they start thinking symbolically. They can draw objects and they can even name objects. They learn nouns first. Another significant characteristic of this stage is that they cannot coordinate different physical attributes. This is about conservation, which I will be explaining in class. The next stage is from 7 to 11 years, the concrete operational stage. Here, logical reasoning develops, but they still need concrete objects. They need to work and see to make sense of how things happen, whether it is math or geography or any subject. If they have something concrete, they are able to understand. They are able to achieve conservation at this age because reversible mental operations is possible. And formal operational stage is the next stage, which is achieved from 11 to 15 years. Here, abstract logic, the abstract thinking happens and hypothetical thinking also develops. So here they don't need concrete objects. They are able to imagine and understand. So this is about physical development and cognitive development in infants. Since human development is a very vast chapter, I will be discussing about the socio-emotional development in infancy and all the other domains for all the other stages, the physical, cognitive, socio-emotional stages for all the stages of the lifespan, I will discuss in detail in class. Now let's go to the previous year's questions for NIOS 12th standard. So in May 2025, from the chapter 13, Infancy and Childhood, which we have discussed now in the video, there are a lot of 1-mark questions. So what is stranger anxiety? Among all these, it is fear of persons they do not recognize. The aim of early stimulation during infancy is to optimize the development of the infant in different domains. It is not to accelerate development, not to force the child to achieve any goals or encourage early maturation. Similarly, there are other 1-markers. I will be discussing with you in class so that it's easy for you and not confusing to make choices between similar ones like these. There's a 3-mark question. How are cognitive attainments reflected during concrete operational stage? You need to highlight the important points and, as far as possible, write in bullet points. Some questions from October 2024 in the new syllabus. I won't be discussing the old syllabus. There are some 1-markers. The 2-mark question is Ramit had mastered the ability to pick up tiniest objects between his thumb and forefingers by early childhood. Explain fine motor abilities that he is likely to achieve by age 4 and 5. So here again, underline the keywords. A 5-mark question is what are the issues and concerns during early childhood, which is toilet training, school readiness, autonomy, and initiative. So in class, I will discuss in detail and I will guide you with how to score full marks by following all the rules to get the attention of the evaluator. So that's it from me in this video. Thank you.